It's 7 o'clock. We're live, I see. I'll call the Wednesday, May 25th, 2022 Nottingham Planning Board meeting to order. Before we begin getting into the cases, I'll go around the room, have everybody introduce themselves, starting on my right with Mr. Davies.
Robert Davies, alternate.
Sherry Sandler.
Gary Anderson.
Ian McKinnon.
Edward Veal.
Susan Mooney.
Charlene Anderson.
Blair Haney, SRPC.
And Mr. Davies will be participating as a non-voting member tonight. There's no Board of Selectmen ex officio rep, and the planning board cannot seat an alternate for that seat. So any votes tonight would be 6 members. We'll take the cases in order. So the first item on the agenda is a continuation for case number 22-002-SUB. Application for Concrete Products of Londonderry, requesting to create a 4-lot subdivision. The property is located at 100 Smoke Street, Nottingham, identified as map 11, lot 3. Is there anybody here for the applicant? No. Mr. Lemieux?
I got an email today, requesting a continuation, until June 11th.
Second meeting.
June 22nd.
This is the second or third time for requests for.
Third, actually.
I feel like it's the third.
First one was an extension for his family.
Yeah, the first one was personal.
Okay.
After that, it was, we'd asked for some
Yeah, he was gonna look at the lot.
kind of major revisions to it.
Right. And there was also, I think, some questions from the butter, was looking for.
Are you looking for a motion, Mr. Chair?
It would, yep.
I move that we continue case 22-002-SUB to June 22nd at 7 p.m.
Second.
It's a motion by Ms. Mooney, a second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 6-0. The next item on the agenda is an extension of approval conditions consideration for case number 20-003-SUB, tax map 7, lot 1N on Mitchell Road. Applicant was Mr. Robert DeBerto. Is you in? Would you like to come on up, please? Just
You have a letter here explaining where we are in the process. Just a couple minor details that are still waiting from the attorneys for review of the homeowners association and the easements for some of the, on the lots for water and wetlands issues. And, state asked for a couple extra test pits that weren't cleared. Those were done recently, and we're expecting that anytime. I expect this all to get wrapped up probably within the next month.
okay.
And I'm anxious to get it done as fast as possible, so.
Okay.
Not dragging our feet, but it's a challenging time to be in the construction business.
So, just to recap on this, I think Mr. Haney had done a really good job, kind of quick recap summary. So basically, this was a conditional approval from May of last year. It had a 1-year condition on that as part of our subdivision regs 11.2. These are all conditions precedent, meaning before we could sign anything. So in that, there's a couple of other areas that it mentions that, how we can extend the approval. So one of the questions in there would be under 11.2, number 2, compliance. If the conditions are not met within 12 months, the conditional approval shall lapse unless a mutually agreeable extension has been granted by the board. And then it mentions about if any zoning changes or anything have occurred since that would make it, that would render the application non-conforming. So this was originally a design review in 2019, and Mr. Haney, correct me if I'm wrong. Design review in 2019, so it was locked into the 2019 zoning. Since then, we've had zoning changes in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Of those, I believe it was, one was just grammatical, one was the stream protection ordinance, the other one was adding conditional use permit to the wetlands.
Driveway setback,
What's that?
driveway setback.
Driveway setback,
Special.
this year, and building height definition, and, a couple of others. I went through those, Mr. Haney, I think you went through, and I didn't see anything in there of those changes that were, that impacted this development.
No, I put 3 in there. I don't think the driveway setback applies in this one. But I put it in there just in case someone might have interpreted it differently. The stream protection does not appear to apply because in the Nottingham side, I don't see a stream that falls into that jurisdiction. Though, wetland conservation conditional use, regulation, there was a variance granted, but, and so, you know, I guess you could sort of make an argument either way. I mean, you know, lawyers.
This is one of the projects that drove us to do that conditional use.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, you know, lawyers can have fun interpreting regulations and stuff and applicability. I didn't really want to get into that, it's just not my expertise, but I wanted to draw it to your attention. So, you know, rather than take you down a rabbit hole of my theory, I just presented it to you.
Sure. And the way I see it is the conditional use actually made it less cumbersome to an applicant, and they already have a variance, which would be the more exacting process.
Okay.
That carries
And
with
that-
the site too,
So the idea being it keeps it with this board, if you want to take those steps.
Yep.
Okay, understood.
And then, because there's a stream, but that's on the Barrington side. If there,
There's no stream there.
okay, it shows on maps,
No, even on the Barrington side, there isn't any.
feeds across the road.
No, it's
But-
actually at the crown of the hill on the Barrington side,
Okay,
almost right across from Warren Road.
okay.
So there's no streams there at all.
It's not on our side anyhow, and it's beyond the whatever our setback would be, from our regs, so.
My biggest issue is I found a little bit of ledge that I wasn't anticipating, so I've got to deal with that.
So then we can just go through quickly what the conditions were, and if you could just confirm for us again the status. I think Mr. Berry's memo to us that we received touches on all those, but the conditions of approval would be plan copies with partial seal signatures. Obviously, that comes later on. The Mylar comes later. State permits for the curb cut, which again, I don't think that comes for that. That'd be from this town. Subdivision approval, subsurface and septic, dredge and fill, and alteration of terrain.
All those pretty much are done. I think the only one that was missing was the DES septic, which I think Mr. Berry alludes to right there.
Okay.
state sub, yeah.
That and then the homeowners association and the easements for the, I think, maintenance for the rain gardens and the wetlands.
Okay.
That's,
And then the HOA
yeah, it's pretty,
documents.
pretty straightforward, nothing too
Okay.
difficult.
And what were you looking for an extension period? Do you have?
Yeah, I would take 3 months, but, you know, we'll be done a lot sooner than that, or it better be, I'll be beating my doors.
Okay.
I wanna get something in this season.
Cause up to this point, it's been a little while since I drove by, is just the roadway been cleared? Is that,
Well, the
Oh, the tr-
roadway,
the
we've cut out the trees,
yeah,
and we've, done stumping.
Okay.
And we've done, obviously, some erosion control because of that, but we haven't put any dozers in there pushing loam or anything like that. And before we do anything of that nature, we will be, having equipment come in to grind the stumps. We're not gonna bury them anywhere, so we're not gonna have buried stump issues at some later date. So we have the, outfits that can grind the whole stumps and make tailings.
yep,
And then we'll use those for the rest of the erosion and sediment control on the rain gardens as well as the road. So to use the stuff rather than running around with trucks here. So we're waiting on that. Part of the other problem is on stuff. One of the things I'll probably try to do is phase it, like phase 1, phase 2. I was talking with Eversource a couple weeks ago on a different project, and they're telling me there's a 1 to 3 year wait on transformers. So even if I do the back part of the road, the cul-de-sac, I can't get transformers. So what I want to do is focus on everything right on Mitchell Road, and go that way. And it's, you know, the supply chain issues are just causing havoc on some of the stuff, and some of the things that you wouldn't think there would be a problem, but they are, so. Welcome to 2022.
Is there any other questions or comments on the board? If not, it is a publicly noticed meeting, so,
I think my only other question, is it still listed for sale, the overall property?
Yes, but we're really not doing much. We'll probably, you know, pull it down. It has been listed, but the problem that you have on it is that, you know, there's no signs up on the property. Is that if you talk to somebody and they look at and you, right now, trying to put an estimate on road construction costs is like throwing darts. I mean, it's just all over the place. So one of the things that I hope to do is get through to determine how much ledge I can get, you know, get the rain garden set up and everything else. That way, you know, I know what the gravels will cost, I know what the pavement will cost, and conduit and all the other stuff. But the ledge is the big question, and no one wants to step into that arena at the moment. And I can't blame them, and myself. I've had people come up and say, ask me about lots, and I've held off trying to even give prices. There's 2 lots there on Mitchell Road that I could sell independent that have its own driveway.
Correct, yeah.
But I'm reluctant to quote numbers because every time I'm turning around, I'm getting.
The 7-day quote?
Or, you know, when it comes in, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you tell somebody something, you gotta stick by it, and so.
Gotcha, thank you.
so this is a public meeting, so I'll welcome comments, if anybody has, you know, questions for the board, or comments for or against. I'd welcome you to step up now. Yeah, just come on up, please, because and just state your name, please.
Patty Royks, I'm across the street, a butter. I just had a couple of questions. One was regarding if I remember correctly, there was a point of discussion as far as leaving it like a buffer along the road where it's a scenic road. And I guess I'm just questioning that with what I'm seeing. There's the 2 roads that are obviously going in, but there's one section already within less than a week's time that just, the only buffer is a couple of pine trees that doesn't provide any buffer, like 20 feet apart from each other or so, or more. I don't know, I didn't measure them. But it's not, I'm just concerned that if that's how it's going, where's the buffer?
Is this the entrance closest to Mitchell or the other one?
It's on Mitchell.
Right, but,
It's
By
closer
Sutton.
to Sutton, yeah.
That's part of the rain garden drainage.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
That's why, that's required for drainage.
Okay.
In the plan, that's why it's cut out like that.
Oh, okay, so what kind of buffer is there gonna be on
Well,
there?
there'll be the main trees and then there'll be buffer on the backside, and everything
I'm
else.
talking on the roadside though.
The existing trees, but that's what called for in the drainage.
Yeah, sorry, we gotta keep the comments coming this way.
Yeah.
So this is just a conditional approval at this point. So the applicant has some items that they had to get before they could have final approval. And then after that, it'd be based on the plans that we have on file. If there's buffers and things built into those plans that were
Right.
part of the conditional approval, that would be part of it. So say a vegetative buffer was removed where it was supposed to be, there would be,
Right.
there'd be a requirement to have that
Right.
restored.
I know I tried looking it up and I couldn't find the original plans. I don't know, a little
I know they're up
technologically
there, you
challenged.
might just have to
Yeah,
dig
I
for
just a
them.
little
They,
technologically challenged, I guess, I couldn't find the
No, we
original, which showed,
adjusted how
which
we
may
were,
have
Yeah.
shown that.
we
Yeah,
adjusted
you're
how
gonna-
we were putting it on there. Originally, it was part of each individual agenda, and it was really difficult
Right, and that's what I
to track
tried
of.
looking,
Now
yeah.
we have and a much better system with Mr. Lemieux. It's,
Current app.
you know, current applications, complete applications, and they're there for things we've received since, but.
Oh, okay, okay.
But they are on there, but it is hard to find. I think you have to go
Okay.
back to the agenda. So if you go back to like,
That's what I
agenda
tried
from
doing,
2020,
but I couldn't, yeah,
you can find
I
it.
didn't, yeah, I probably just didn't go back far enough.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, I don't know, he mentioned something about Eversource coming in. We've got New Hampshire Electric Co-op now, and I'm just concerned that Eversource is gonna come in, and can they like take over the lines that we've got at this point, or?
No, I
'cause-
think his references, all of them are, all the electric companies are having trouble with transformers.
Okay, no, he
Sorry.
mentioned Eversource as being the one
Yeah.
that's gonna come in and
Yeah,
to that.
I think he was
heard
just-
he was talking to Eversource about
Oh,
another,
okay,
another
okay.
project.
Okay, good, because we don't want Eversource. Just saying, okay, all right, thank you.
And I think to the point, the trees, I do recall, more specifically to the entrance of the road closest to Mitchell, I do remember on the plan, there was some, you know, there's a drainage feature there as well, and I know there were some proposed trees kind of shown along that whole frontage, essentially after the fact.
Yeah, I thought there was gonna be some planting.
Yeah, there was some evergreen plant, kinda after they need to construct the berming, and then there was gonna be some evergreen, yeah. I know it's on the plans, I remember it's on those plans, yeah.
More of a visual buffer than.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to come up? And again, just please identify yourself and then have comments. on this
Jennifer,
way.
I lived on 2 Sutton Street. I'm in a butter. Number one, I never heard before HOA fees. And it just makes me think of, you know, city life and all that kind of stuff. I do know up the street that Autumn Lane and those guys, they have smaller, you know, lots because they have a common area. I'm just curious as what is going on with the HOA fees.
If memory serves me correctly on this, those were a part of the infrastructure costs. So obviously like the stormwater and drainage structures that are pretty significant.
Okay, it's not
So
like
if
they're,
the town doesn't wanna absorb that,
Okay.
especially initially.
but it's not like they're gonna be putting lights up, you know, like street lights and all this other stuff.
I don't
And
believe there's
then,
any plan for any of that. I don't remember any of that shown
okay,
on the plans.
I'm just, you know,
And there's no community water, so the HOA won't control water or septic or anything like that.
okay. It just, you know, you hear it and it just doesn't sound like the town of Nottingham,
Yeah.
you know. The other thing is, it doesn't really pertain to, I guess, this, but there is a piece of equipment that has been sitting there since last fall. And I guess it's not running, but it could be leaking oil or diesel fuel, and I'm just curious as to why it's sitting there and it's not being used.
Yeah, we can ask the applicant that when he comes back up.
So, you know, that just kind of concerns me. So, all right, thank you.
Is there any further comment or questions? No, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion of it. Mr. Dubert, if you can come on back up for a moment. And I think you answered most of the questions that had come up there. So the one, I guess, would be that last piece is just the, obviously, it's a little bit outside the purview of the board, but if there's a piece of equipment there.
The piece of, well, what happened was we were doing some of the cutting last year.
Yep.
The cutting was not finished. Mr. Gupta was in Barrington, just left his piece of equipment there. It's not leaking or anything else, it can run. He's had some health issues, I brought someone else in. He's gonna be using that equipment there. So rather than move this stuff around, he hasn't needed it. He's, I'm gonna say semi-retired now, so he's not doing as much as he once did. But the equipment isn't fine, and we waited till just recently to start back up, so got through the wet spring, if you will, which makes it more desirable to work now than back then. And, but the equipment is fine. I'm not aware of any leaks or anything else.
Do you know what it is? Is it just one
It's an
piece?
excavator.
Excavator, okay. All right. Yeah, and obviously the plan is
Well,
if this goes through in the next few months, then, you know, obviously it would be in use.
and it was also there that when we came back in for chipping, well, we had to extend the stone pad for the chip truck to sit on and so forth, and it was used for that. So it has been used, but minimally, almost nothing, and gone back to the same spot. But, you know, we expect that to change pretty quickly.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board?
There was one, I know, Mr. Berry mentioned, Kevin, have we, I don't know when this came in, but the survey of Mitchell Road, I know they provided it, do we know that at least it got over to like Sean at the highway and it's not just? I assumed it was something that maybe a copy like Sean would probably want a copy from the highway department side, but.
I don't know, so I just got this letter, 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So, but I know that, Sean actually talked to Mr. Burke, so I don't know what they discussed. You bumped into to Sean today, the
Yes,
highway?
yeah.
I know they had a conversation, I wasn't privy to it, but I know that they crossed paths and talked.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the road had been regraded this spring, had rutted up through, not through us, but through
Every year.
every year. So it had been regraded, so it's not in bad shape, and we haven't really gone over it with any trucks of any consequence. So, but I think in the upgrades on the road, there's a culvert that has to be replaced or something.
Yep.
So, I think they wanted, some as-bills or something like that, more definition
Yeah,
than what
okay.
they had before, and that's what Mr. Berry was providing.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I know there was there was like the culvert and then some minor regrading to give you better cover over the pipe or something like that, so.
Well, I think
But I
that's-
assume you haven't
yeah.
done any of that, correct?
no,
Yeah.
we're not touching that until we get further. One of the things which I alluded to was the issue of ledge. You know, that's not gonna change the overall drainage patterns. And part of the way the drainage is set up is that it'll alleviate some of the drainage actually on Mitchell Road that'll be diverted into my property. But one of the things that'll happen is some of the elevations on the road may change due to ledge. Some of them may come out due to blasting, some of them may get elevated a little bit, you know. That's sort of a work in progress, we'll find out. And I'm anxious to find that out sooner rather than later.
And obviously, you know, during the timeline of construction, some of those roads are now, you know, get posted in the spring with, mud season, so I'm sure that would, yeah, keep that
Yeah,
in mind.
when I
The
had
road
talked-
agent, I'm sure will be, and the building inspector would be on top of that for you. Okay. Is there any other further discussion from the board? So the applicant's requesting a 3-month continuance.
I was wondering if we should just stick with like 6 months, so they're not pushing up against, you know, sometimes with the state, they can, you can be waiting for them to turn stuff around, so. Just to cover us, we maybe stick to like a
If that's more convenient.
6
I'm
month,
fine with
and,
that.
yeah.
You know, if,
For a time,
I'm
they
certainly
said.
gonna press as fast as I can, from
And
my
then,
standpoint.
fingers crossed, they're usually pretty quick, but I've also run into cases where the state gets caught up on something, so.
We try to be conscientious of what's in the applicant's control and what's kind of outside their control. So, you know, when it's under the applicant's control, we're a little more stringent because,
I appreciate that.
but when it's, it comes to another department or entity, I think what Mr. McKinnon is echoing, is saying is valid.
I also think that it gives the town's legal review opportunity, to fit it into his schedule for his review.
An HOA, yeah.
Yeah, all the other documents too.
So the extension is taken from May 26th of this year, correct?
May 25th,
Or,
I think.
so
26th,
whenever
you're
we
correct,
vote,
May
yeah, I
26th,
didn't know if
you're
it
correct,
was, we had to basically vote on a 6-month from when it expires.
That makes
Yeah.
sense, yep. Which would put us into November, right around Thanksgiving, so, I would probably just do like November 1st, or pick a date that's.
Yeah, that's just something easier to follow.
It will be the
November,
second.
November 9th would be our, first meeting in November, I think that date is correct.
It might be our only.
Yep, it's the only one.
Okay. So it'd be just short, shy of 6 months,
So carry the 9th, or you wanna carry the 1st?
the 9th.
Yeah, the 9th, okay. I'll make a motion to, approve the extension request of conditions for case number 20-003-SUB, to November 9th, 2022.
A second?
With a motion by Mr. McKinnon, a second by Ms. Mooney. Do we have any further discussion? my only, before I call the vote on it, so one of the items, it's not only the HOA documents, but it's to make sure that we have them submitted so that we can get legal review back. So we don't necessarily need to amend the motion, but we'd obviously need to make sure we have those within,
Yeah, cause they still have to comply with the conditions, right?
Yep. Like a month ahead of time.
So assume whenever you get those HOA docs, get them,
Sorry to come in late, I have a question I'd like to ask, if that's okay.
Something that,
I know you guys are already gone for work.
Based on something he's advocated that we're all
Yeah.
wondering about blasting.
Sure,
you can hold it.
I'll hold the call and the vote for a moment on that one. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
come
go
on up.
ahead.
And identify yourself, please.
How you doing? My name's Dennis Buck. I live on 2 Sutton Street, a budding property. And we were just, what Mr. DiBerto said about the blasting because of the ledge issue. I was just curious if there's a chance that would damage our water supply or change it in some way. Hopefully you don't have to do a lot of it. I know it's part of the deal, but.
There's a lot, there's,
Part of what I know of blasting, and I'm not an expert, the elevation is less than when you live on Sutton Street.
Yep.
The significance of the blasting will be minor, more stuff, not no large big things, the distance you have. There's no problems on that, nature. And the other thing is, any blaster that's gonna be in there is gonna be falling short.
Certified and
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
okay, that was
yeah, you
my
just-
question, I know most of those guys they have to jump through a lot of hoops to do
Yeah,
that kind
so,
of job.
and I've used it on multiple stuff, the distances where the ledge is versus where the houses are is very significant. And in all my past, I haven't seen any issues. You know, I've done them where you had to do water lines going in with 50 and 100 feet, or maps over, every day they wouldn't have to, but, the blasters are pretty responsible, and the premiums are
Sure.
over there.
Oh, you said it, so we were curious, you know, that was one of the things.
That's a legitimate concern, but,
Is that where that rises?
yeah, there's a couple of,
Right
one
across
is,
the street.
well, one of the things that I don't know, okay, is that we have some rises when you measure. I don't know if I have to take out a foot rather than blasting it, I might hammer it out. Or if it's a foot, I might raise the road to go over it. So right now.
You just haven't, I'm sure.
I can't give you an answer that I don't know, or either that I'd be just talking off the top of my head.
I just wanted to make sure we brought it up just because.
No, no, I.
appreciate that. The blasting companies generally do have some very strict, things that they have to follow, because again, and sometimes that depends on your proximity, they may do
Blast survey.
a blast survey, meaning checking foundations.
Yeah, so then,
Things like that,
in the
sure.
state permit they have, the alteration of terrain, if there is blasting, they actually have to file a plan per se that covers that, the steps that have to be taken for blasting.
Okay,
Generally, if a blasting company's on site, they at least walk to the abutters and notify / do a visual inspection.
yep.
'Cause that's how
Where
they,
he's
otherwise
talking-
their insurance doesn't cover them if they don't know what was there before or after, so. And they have to contact you to set up a blast survey.
so they're insured if for some reason our well went dry.
The blaster is, yeah. That's why blasting isn't cheap, because you're paying for their premium.
Sure,
Um,
sure this.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion, and a second to continue the case to continue the, conditions to November 9th, 2022, just shy of 6 months, but that puts it at a planning board meeting. Again, it's November, so it'd be around Thanksgiving. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries, 6-0. So, again, probably at least 30 days in advance, we make sure we get those HOA things, so we can give them to legal for review. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there generally is no, so usually this is kind of it, unless there's not a continuance, anything like that, then you'd probably hear again, but otherwise, if they satisfy all the conditions, they're legal, then it's just, the plans are signed and it becomes final at that point.
So we won't get another letter.
There's generally no more true action on it by the board, other than confirming the conditions and then signing off on the plan. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Public comment this time of night, we invite any member of the public to come in and have a conversation with us. Can't be plan specific or project specific, but general questions about planning, process, we can answer. There's nobody here tonight, so we'll move on from that.
Mr. Beal, I have a comment.
Yes.
Is it possible for people to send in a letter or an email that we can respond to, even if they aren't here in person?
Always, yep, so.
Okay.
As part of so part of the public hearings, we can accept written testimony, from people that can't be in. And that can either get read into the record or just become a part of the public record. For general comments, yes, we can accept items that way as well, but again, if it's plan or project specific, application specific, we won't be able to answer.
Correct. I just wanted the public to know that.
Yep, and I appreciate that, yes, because obviously, time's tough for people. If you don't think you can make it, you can always provide written comment. We have one set of minutes ready for tonight, approval of minutes for the April 13th, 2022. I know I had sent edits, Ms. Mooney had sent edits, I think a few others can come in. If there's nothing further on those, then acceptance of those would be in order.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended, for April 13th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Anderson, a second by Mr. Anderson. Any further comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 6-0. Okay, select board, staff board member updates. I will, start on my right with Mr. Davies and we'll go around the table.
Well, not being a selectman, I don't have any comments.
That you're under the board member update part. Sorry. Ms. Hamlin, first. Mr. Anderson?
Just thank you for the board's grace at my absence last meeting, but we had a well-attended charter meeting for the 300th, and that's my reason for not being here last night.
Thank you for wearing multiple hats, actually, for attending that for us.
Nothing from me. There's a chance I won't be able to make the June 8th meeting for a work meeting, but I will be sure to let you guys know ahead of time.
The only thing for me is I've still been in communication with SRPC and we'll be planning to get a letter out to DOT about a corridor study for Route 4. And I'll be copying Lee, Barrington, and Northwood on that. Epsom may get included just because it would make sense for a terminal end, but it's a different district in a different regional planning commission, so.
Whole other list of traffic problems once you go past
Right.
that traffic circle.
So we, the more support or more letters we can get from the surrounding communities for that have Route 4, and the more likely it would get some attention and possible funding from DOT. So that'll be going out shortly.
My turn?
It is.
Okay. This past Monday, we continued a public hearing. The Conservation Commission continued a public hearing in the chambers of the Select Board and solicited comment from the audience, as we did on the previous session, and closed. And then the Select Board approved the release of $117,000 from the Conservation Fund to quit 50% of the debt on Mulligan Forest. And the other 50% will come from other sources, and that will be done.
Excellent.
Will be done.
Are the other sources already lined up, or is it?
Yes, yeah.
Does that leave any funds in the conservation fund?
It
Are
was
committed.
what we had deliberated, and it was what we thought that we could contribute to the debt without completely kneecapping the fund. Interestingly, there were people that spoke at the hearing that indicated there might be a big project coming up on a part of town that has very rich and sensitive habitats.
Well, actually, they spoke after the hearings.
Right, they did, but they were
They should
there.
have spoke before the hearing.
Yeah,
Yes,
a little
but they spoke in the presence of the Select Board, which was a good audience
Right.
to hear that. So we'll see where we go.
But there are still some funds which will.
Yes,
so it
yes,
basically
yes.
allows the Conservation Commission to continue on with the mission that you're
Yes,
tasked with.
and we'll have time to negotiate and plan with regional planning, regional, town what am I doing? Land trust, agencies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any updates for the, SRPC. I wasn't able to make the last policy committee meeting, but I do have, two questions. We should probably put on a near future agenda to look at the impact fees for the fire department, because the board also voted Monday night to pay that debt off as well. So I think at some point we need to look at that and get in contact with the chief,
I think you brought it up too, that we gotta kind of figure out going forward what happens, if that money just keeps going into their fund, like, does
Oh,
it
I
just
think we-
just sits there?
I think we need to shut it off, I think is what it is, unless they've got other projects.
We would have to have a, so
Public
generally the way
hearing.
impact fees work, and I've been in communication with, a few months ago with, the town administrator on this, you know, envisioning this coming up at some point. So obviously, once that's expended and that's done, obviously the fees will probably come out of whatever fees have been collected already would be expended first. I think that has to come before the board, us first to make the vote to authorize it, and then would get actually expended from the select board. And then, but after, once that debt is zero, if there's nothing else in the capital improvement plan that would support an impact fee, you're correct, we need
Yeah.
to.
So does that reduce, does that mean that just erases that from the overall, you know, the multi-part impact fee? That part of it just
We
goes
just be
away?
eliminated, that we just,
We would, I think the way we would handle it, so most of the time, the impact fees are collected at the time of, I believe at the building permit or certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
So it's not at the time of approval. So there's, for new cases, you know, there could be waiver requests that we could potentially grant for that portion of the fee. Other than that, yes, it would be going through the building inspector.
Yeah, I guess the hope
And
was
then they
that,
could get returned, you know, I imagine they could get returned as well, but that is something we need to, keep on the agenda, and I expect to hear more from town administration as to when that is likely to happen.
that's what I was wondering, is if, you know, essentially stop collecting it because it's been zeroed out. My hope is that, you know, say in 5 years, something else comes up, that we don't have an issue you know, applying it again, because it is in the structure of the impact fee.
Yeah,
in our
we
code. So
can,
hopefully it's not something you have to go through a bunch of hoops to start recollecting it, but.
yeah, my memory is correct on how impact fees get adjusted. I believe we just have to have a public hearing on it, and then, we can adjust them at any time. So we could zero it out, or we could,
Just, no, I see, put a zero on that line item and then.
that
we
way
can always
keep
amend
that
it.
piece of the fee for future, in case, you know, a capital improvement item does pop in, that would be, make sense for, fire impact fee.
Or after a 5-year period, if there's not a need, just
Returns to the current owner, yep.
I think that makes more sense, because just because, families move in a certain year, it might take a cumulative amount of new residents to cause an impact to the fire or any other.
right, so
Yeah.
it's just,
It's
there's
not
a
just-
time lapse.
Yeah, cumulative.
Yeah, and that's why there's usually, you know, the impact fee portion of the state laws, the RSA, it's, you know, one of those, I can't remember the term for it, but one of those items that is helps a community plan, and obviously, but it has to be supported by, you know, a need, and so that's usually a capital improvement item. Something like where the school has a plan for possible expansion, so there's something we could quantify and use for our justification of a fee, but if there's zero, not coming from the fire department, then yes, it'd be hard to justify that.
If you wanna implement it in your town, it's actually, you have to have like a pretty extensive report done, you kind of have a specialty in it.
right, which we did have done, and then
Right.
we updated it. And the impact fees, just for my own curiosity, I went back and looked at the last 3 years when that petition warrant article came up, and the impact fees were paying half of that fire department debt every year. So,
Significant.
yeah. The other question I had is, are we gonna get copies, printed copies of the updated zoning ordinances? I know you sent us electronic. I
I
thought you
meant to
were,
do it for this one.
Okay.
And I apologize, I thought
Okay.
about it when I came in, I was like, I thought zeros.
Okay,
So I do apologize, but they will be in your next.
okay, appreciate it, thank you.
No.
That's all I have.
Appreciate it. Mr. Heaney?
Well, I was planning on suggesting that we start thinking about doing that roadway setback, beginning next month. But Kevin just told me we have four new, applications for the upcoming meeting. So, and then what happens is we get into a new contract. So, we wanna, I need to talk to Jen about, how we've been using it the time before, and then how we need to use it moving forward. Right, like, am I spending too much time doing anything in particular, or are we staying underneath the contract numbers and stuff like that? So, it is on my radar. I do agree we should start it soon, so that we don't get caught, blindsided, or not blindsided, but like, we have time.
Okay.
I would like to start doing it, but Kevin just said that, and I think that, it's gonna consume most of next month for me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and so, I can start looking as well, see if there's other towns that have, how they have the verbiage, and see if there's a way we could just, so we talked about doing a roadway setback, we have a driveway setback now that's part of zoning, we talked about doing a roadway setback, which would fall more into the subdivision regs, and or, site plan regulations, so the thought was, for best practice, to keep roadways off of, lot lines, so meaning, less impact to abutters that happen to already be there. So a subdivision reg amendment is a lot easier than a zoning amendment. It's a public hearing and then, vote by the board, and then it's changed, so it's not a town warrant article like a zoning is.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. This one, though, has a trickle-down effect. That's what we were discovering as I was looking into it before, that as you start working with roadways, there's more regulations that get involved, whereas
You get into like lot layout, you get into a lot of the,
you have to do like a lot of cross-checks, like how does this affect this regulation down here 2 chapters away? Did anyone before me begin to look into it? Because I haven't found any, like, unlike other zoning ordinances, I've seen, previous conversations and.
No, this was something that came up,
Okay,
I think I brought it up.
so we're kind of starting this from scratch.
yeah, I think Ed or I brought it up for the specific conceptual review,
Yeah, we had-
design review for Smoke Street.
yeah,
We looked at it.
it was that, yeah, or, I think it was actually, Flutter, there was one that was,
right,
the
It was
existing
right
house
on-
was an old house, so
yeah.
it was close to the lot line, and then they were gonna be dropping the.
Yeah.
It was like
Arrow
10
neck.
feet from the house.
Sure, yeah.
abutting
No,
house.
it totally makes sense. I mean, it almost seem intuitive that that it should be done, like, right? I completely agree. And especially as you're starting to build out more, you're gonna start seeing more and more applicants try and shoehorn in things. And-
Yeah.
And you're gonna start seeing the backlots and,
Well, to that point too, right, cause you'll see people, whether they're existing or not, people will leave themselves, I mean, we have a regulation against the width of a lot, but there are lots out there probably that have a 50-foot right of way, it's been there for 50 years. And then we'll have to see how that, I mean, if that's the only place a road can go, then legally it kinda has to go there, so that's a tricky one there.
yeah, I mean, as you're starting to see housing prices get to a point where you could justify the cost to build that roadway. Building a driveway to driveway standards doesn't cost too much, but building a roadway to roadway standards costs significantly. And then you throw in all the utilities. And we're starting to hit that point here in Nottingham and a lot of other smaller communities in New Hampshire. So, yeah, you'll start to see that. So it's a good idea. It's a great idea.
All right, thanks. Mr. Lemieux?
Yeah, so, took a little bit of my thunder, but I rather him
As
be the-
did you.
I'd rather him be the bearer of bad news than me. So I apologize about the ZOs and the bylaws, I've been meaning to get them in, but I did get hit a little bit with, we got 4 applications in. So the next meeting we'll have the 4 brand new ones, which is a little bit happy, even though it's minute, but that the other concrete had bumped off into the next meeting, cause it's not 5 hearings, but we do have 4 new ones. Off the top of my head, so 1 subdivision, it's just 2 lot, I believe, 2 site, 2 site plans.
Is one of them the Shea Concrete location on Route 4?
Shea Concrete, correct.
What I might do is make sure I can get coverage for my meeting, cause I know you have to potentially recuse yourself for that one.
Yep. So they, obviously, just so, you know, board's aware and everything, so if we have a night where there's a lot of cases, you know, we are required by statute to, you know, act on it, on applications within a certain amount of time, but that's the application itself. So if we have a night where it's a very heavy load, there's no guarantee for the applicant or the abutters that we're gonna be doing the public hearing on the same night. It could be continued, so we'll see how it goes and what the cases are that night, but that stands for any night with caseload. We try to divvy it up or work with the applicants to get them on to, you know, the agendas that make the most sense without delaying them, but, there's nothing in the regs or in our own bylaws that says that we
We don't have to take
will
action.
accept and take action in the same night.
The last one was a lot line adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
And I think I read there's a bill that is giving planning boards a bigger, like a 65-day window now to look at that. I don't know if I can't remember if it passed, but I think it did.
For the initial action, or for,
For the initial, I think it is. So, probably not passed yet, but, you know, or through the whole legislative process, but when I read that, I'm like, okay, that would be good.
because there are some towns that will do that, to be like, we can't get you on June. You can submit by the May deadline,
Right.
they'll just tell you, I can't get you on in June, and they'll push you to the July, so there must be some sort of town by town rule.
It might be that you only have, oh, I don't know, I should,
Yeah.
sometimes you only have to open the hearing, you don't even have to act on it, you just have to open
Yeah.
it. It just, yeah.
I mean, if you gave me, again, if I, when they come in, and I can say, well, you know, our bandwidth is 3 or whatever, I'll just throw this out here, I'm not clearly making a rule on it. Say, oh, our bandwidth is 3, once we get to, you just do them in order as they come in, you say, well, it'll be accepted, so we could theoretically do 5 cases with 3 being heard, 2 being accepted, still being in that 30-day window. You know, if you can work it around that way, if that's,
A lot of it just depends on what it is.
No, it's just,
Right.
it's just more just setting the tone, you know, that again, and expectations. We're a pretty efficient board, I think. We don't delay things unnecessarily, but again, it depends on what the caseload is and what they are. You know, minor subdivisions are one thing, lot line adjustments another. Major subdivisions and site plan reviews take a lot more time and effort and can have a lot more public testimony, so. Yeah.
Site plans can be tough.
Right.
In prep for them all, I had a schedule, that's what, it's like, ah!
All right, so,
Bring up something about ADUs, if, I know that's off subject, but, how, there was recently an approval for a variance for a detached ADU. And that brought the subject up in the past, and just my gut feeling is we have many of those. Not legal necessarily in town. And so I wanted to just put that out there for food for thought more than anything.
Was that at the last zoning board?
Yes, I believe it was the last meeting, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of,
Back and listen to that justification.
it was kind of a unique, I listened to it, it was kind of a unique property that the existing structure, I believe, was very small, but in good shape and everything else, and they wanted to build a home to fit their family in it. But the way the lot was, the way the lot layout was, it made more sense to have the house further away, you know,
Gotcha.
for cost, and also to expand that other one wouldn't make sense either, again, because of the site constraints, but, yeah, I think if we do get to that point as a board, you know, again, we just have to look, I think there's, like Mr. Haney said on the roadway setback, we have to look at all the other pieces that you have to do, you know, and some towns require permits for, that one is owner occupied, so you're not getting basically 2 separate creating rental properties of, this is a rental property, and you have now a multifamily situation really,
Might be kind of interesting conversation next time we meet with zoning.
yep, I agree.
Well, and I think the other thing too, to kind of going back to Blair needing to talk to Jen and stuff, is master plan. And you know, we've talked about utilizing, Stratford Regional to help us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, we do chapters at a time, so people don't have to, towns don't have to take on the
Yeah, that's what we
monstrous
had
cost.
talked about.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be an evaluation of like, what have you done recently, what do you wanna get done, and those are separate contracts outside of this circuit riding contract, so that'll be something that you have to find the money for, but Jen is the person to talk to on that, I know that much. But we are doing it for other communities.
And I think to Blair's point, if we're gonna start talking about subdivision or site plan, I know there's a couple things that I've jotted down that should probably, like you said, if we do find a meeting for some reason that's fairly quiet, maybe we should start talking about there's some site plan related ones that I think it would be prudent to make some updates to, probably haven't been touched in, you know. Well, storm events are extremely outdated for what the state uses, stuff, there's like little stuff like that, small updates, but
Yeah, there's a change.
those don't require as much involvement as the road one, that's definitely, that chases, but.
So the site.
I've got my list going, I'm sure you guys have got your list going, I mean, one of the places I wanna start is the application. I really wanna start seeing applicants be required to give a more robust narrative on what they're asking for. I just, it's better to hear it in their words, to give us a sense of what they're looking to do.
I think a way to do that would be to add, some like verbiage onto it that says, you know, narrative should include, should touch upon these points.
Points, yeah, it's a great point.
A cover letter request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of times they'll draw your attention to the things that are probably the most important, right? Everything else is probably boilerplate, you know, that you don't really wanna spend your time, when you have 4 applications sitting in front of you, you don't wanna spend your time looking for this, you know, lot sizes. They mean zoning, fine, let me move on to the next thing. And I would like to get us to get to that point. I think putting the onus on them is important.
What stands out?
Precisely, yeah. Especially because that's when they're gonna draw their attention to the things they need approval for example, waivers. Why do you want this waiver? What is the waiver? Because the way it is now, it's just a box check. And a lot of it just, is it not applicable or you're not asking for it? I don't even know what the NA stands for. Yeah, so just anyways, little things like that.
Well, wasn't one of them, we had a waiver request that only referred to subdivision regulations?
Yes,
Wasn't that?
yeah. That's the other thing, there might need to be a separate application for, is it subdivision site plan review? I think they're kind of on the same application.
And you-
Yeah, it's very confusing for, the applicant too.
Yeah.
I get all the time, they'll ask me, cause they'll be like, alright, what do I put, you know, do I check this one, do I check that, and it's just a project, it's an overall project application. And I think we even talked about sectors that already.
Yeah.
And I think Mr. McGinn's point is correct, you know, that some of the stuff is old. We did update the site plan review regulations, but realistically, it was taking most of what was in the revised subdivision regs and pushing it over so the formatting matched up, so that's why you see, and that was a big step to try to get things more in line with each other. But, yes, I'm sure the data requirements are probably a bit outdated. So yes,
I think we know there's probably potential for more site plans in the future, we know there's some property acquisitions in commercial locations, so.
I think if anybody has a list of items that they notice that should be tweaked in any of the regs, especially the sub-regs of the site plan, I'd say email them to Mr. Lemieux, you can see Blair, just so we can make sure there's a running list, so hopefully when we do get to that meeting, we can, have a good conversation and then get one update done, so we're not doing it 6 times. All right, match plan, yes, we got a list of things, and then we'll have zoning stuff in the fall, so. All right, is there any other discussion for tonight? Seeing none, motion to adjourn would be in order.
Some of,
We have a second?
Second.
everybody's.
All in favor, aye. Thank you, everybody.
Go ahead.